Hello, and welcome to Principles of Marketing. I'm your Professor John Harvey, and this week you're working on Chapter 6 in the according to the syllabus, which is fairly light, and even next week you have the no chapters due. And the reason for that is because I want you to work on your marketing evaluation. So I've put in the criteria. You'll see that under the course content information, what I'm looking for in terms of deliverables for this first marketing evaluation. So there's kind of an overview of the business. There's the environmental analysis, and then the SWOT analysis. And we've talked about each of those items, so you're familiar with those concepts. So that part should be fairly straightforward. What I am looking for in terms of grading is I'm looking at networking, I'm looking at connection to the material, and I'm looking at format. So in terms of, let's take those in reverse order. What I mean by format is fairly straightforward. I'm looking for it to be a certain length. I'm expecting it to be without any grammar issues, 12-point font, all that kind of standard paper type stuff. Okay. I would suggest that you have good section headers in there to kind of isolate each of the sections that you're doing. Now, the second thing was connection to the book. So we've talked about it in discussion boards, but it's also been in the quizzes and just through the chapters. There's a ton of information there. And what I'd be looking for as you do your marketing evaluation is that you connect a bunch of those things to the book. So not just the SWOT analysis, but I'd expect some details in there, right? Environmental analysis, there's a whole bunch of things that we've covered that would fit in that category. So I'll be looking to not just see that you interviewed somebody, but that you also asked questions or made connections to the material in the course that we've covered so far. So I want to see that application. And then the first thing I was bringing up is networking. And what I mean by networking is that it's very important for you as a college student to learn this skill. And this is a skill that in the past wasn't as relevant, because it used to be that when you got a college degree, that kind of separated you from the pack and made it kind of unique. So when people saw that you had a college degree, they went, oh, well, okay, let's get this person, hired. And so, degrees usually meant good jobs. Nowadays, almost everyone has a degree, so that doesn't really distinguish you. But what does distinguish you is your ability to connect and relate to people. And so what I'd suggest is that you find a company or a business or an industry that you really want to work in, and focus your marketing evaluation on that. Reach out to somebody in that industry that you would like to go work for, and then ask them these questions and start doing this evaluation on them. And this is a great kind of easy way to do this, because you're like, hey, I'm a college student, I got to write this paper on on a marketing evaluation, can I come interview you? That's a great way to get your foot in the door. So this does several things. One, it gets you in front of somebody in the company that you'd like to work for, right? Two, it allows you to have this interaction with them. So they get to see you, you get to see them, and you can ask them questions, about the company and about their business, and they can ask you questions, and you can kind of, just make that connection, right? So that when a position does come available, and your name, gets floats through there, they'll make that connection, right? They recognize you versus nobody, a bunch of names that they've never met, right? So you stand a much better chance when they already have a personal connection with you. Okay, so this really helps you in that way. But also, I really want you to make this connection between the course material and the real world. How do people handle these things? Do they look at the environment and the legal environment and the infrastructure environment and the all of these things. Have they considered a SWOT analysis, and what does that mean for their company? These are all like very relevant, useful things, and so I want you to make that connection between the book and the real world, right? So it does all of that, and this is not a guarantee by any stretch, but I have had students that have really taken this to heart and gone out and reached out to somebody in a company that they've always wanted to work for, and by the end of the semester they've been offered jobs before. Like it works, it makes sense, you make that connection. So I want you to put your best foot forward and try and do that. And so for that reason, that's part of my grading. So I don't want you interviewing your dad or your brother or your husband or something like that. No, I want you to reach out, stretch yourself, and reach out to somebody or a company or an industry or something that you're really interested in going and doing something with. So I'll be looking at networking, connection to the material, and format as kind of my grading criteria for that. All right, so the last thing I just wanted to talk about chapter 4, where we're talking about privacy and marketing. And this is an area that this generation, this upcoming generation, just really it is completely like invisible to them. Like it just doesn't mean anything. Privacy just has no real concept to them. Everything gets posted on social media. Everything is taken when you sign up for an app, and they just don't care. And so, it's something that we need to be very aware of, and something that we need to right now the industry doesn't know how to regulate this, because the legal system and the government doesn't really have a good way of staying caught up with all of the technology and all of the abilities that happen in business. And so they're just constantly behind on that. But you, as practitioners of marketing and you learning this stuff, you need to be aware of this, that we have data breaches because companies are collecting a bunch of data, right? And so we're part of the problem, and we can be part of the solution by realizing that one, privacy does matter, and maybe there's stuff that we shouldn't gather, even though we can, right? That's one thing that we can do internally, in a company, is that let's not gather everything. We don't need that information, and once we have it, then we're responsible to hold it, secure it, and all that, right? So it actually creates more of a liability for us. That's one perspective to it. The other is just that you need to be aware right now. The friction or the transaction cost of giving that stuff over is just so smooth that it's really hard to safeguard your privacy. And so as marketers, we need to be aware of that and be conscious of what's happening there. So, all right, enough of my little soapbox there, but I want you guys to be thinking about privacy and being aware of that, because you probably don't want everybody to see everything, right? There's some sort of line where you want only some people to see some things, and right now, with the way the privacy is, you're probably not aware of it, but it's not working the way that you would expect. So, all right. With that, have a great week, guys, and I'll talk to you soon. All right.